the ETs that Moses in the Bible and other persons from the Bible interacted with? And what was the light on Mount Sinai and the burning bush?
Some of the extraterrestrials that Moses interacted with were the idea of the Anunnaki attempting to correct what the original group of Anunnaki caused by the creation of Homo sapiens on your planet, and attempted to guide and preserve certain genetic lines that would allow for the eventual evolution of the Earth into the sixth hybrid race. Some were not Anunnaki. We have been asked this question before, and we are not allowed to discuss that race. The idea of the light is simply the light from a craft, the energy from a craft landing on the mountain that interacted with Moses. The idea of the burning bush, again, a holographic projection of energy that was interpreted as fire. Similar in many ways to what people on your planet have been experiencing today as orbs of energy, orbs of light. So interpreted in an old-fashioned way, because that was all that was understood. Energy at the time was not understood in the way you understand it now scientifically. Therefore, it was perceived as a fire, when all it was basically an orb of glowing energy to represent a communication modality, a probe that would allow for communication to occur between the extraterrestrials and the individual experiencing the idea of the burning of the orb. It used the idea of a bush kind of similarly to the idea of anchoring it to a spot, like an antenna.
So you've mentioned before that if we were to time travel back in time, because our frequency is much higher now, that we would glow if we encountered the historical beings.
You would appear to them to glow, yes.
Yeah. So did Jesus appear to glow also?
From time to time, yes. This is what is usually referred to as the transfiguration in your religious doctrines. The idea that he was perceived as being surrounded by a glowing aura.
And this person is saying, I'm left with a distinct impression that virtually all angels described as light beings that came from the sky and the stars in most religious doctrines are actually highly advanced aliens from other civilizations that have visited Earth. Is that correct?
Not all, but most. Extra dimensionals, extraterrestrials, beings of higher frequency, but sometimes spirit beings as well that can manifest themselves to appear as if they are physical when they may not be. So it's a variety of things, yes.
Okay. And this person's asking about ancient Greece. I'm currently being taught in universities that Hera was oppressed in relation to Zeus, and that women were not respected in ancient Greece or any other parts of the world. My intuition tells me that's wrong, especially since there were like temples to Hera and things like that. So did the ancient Greeks truly view Hera as a goddess?
Yes. The idea again represents the struggle that humanity has gone through with regard to the idea of the balancing of the male and female energies. Now, yes, you are correct. This is not true at the time for the entire planet. Different portions of the planet, different cultures on your planet have gone through things in different ways at different times with respect to the balancing of the male and female energy. But definitely there have always been portions that did respect the balance and express the balance, or at the very least did respect the feminine energy. And as you say, as you point out, erected temples to demonstrate that fact. So it's not really just as simple as everyone doing the same thing on your planet at the same time.
And are Metatron, Thoth, and Hermes the same archetype?
Thoth and Hermes are similar in vibrational energy. The idea of Metatron is something different. Metatron is more of an archetypal representation of the underlying template of reality as you experience it, more of a geometric format, more of an expression of the foundation upon which you build consciousness to create certain reality experiences.
You've spoken about Atlantis, but I heard about Mu Lemuria for the first time from your channelings recently. Can you provide us with information about them beyond the idea that they were rivals with the Atlanteans?
Well, they weren't really rivals in the sense that you might mean that today. The idea is that Atlantis was an offshoot or a colony eventually, but you have to understand that Mu existed in the Western South Pacific Ocean, and by migrating to what you now recognize as North America, were responsible for creating many of the indigenous cultures in North, Central, and South America that eventually migrated across the continent to create Atlantis as a colony that existed much, much later than Mu. While some Lemurians still existed, at the beginning of Atlantis, almost none existed by the end of Atlantis because of different changes physiologically, geologically that took place on your planet that broke up the land masses in what you now consider to be the Eastern Asian areas, South Pacific areas, creating islands and so on and so forth that used to be connected when the oceans were much lower. So the idea of Atlantis came much, much later.
And the water erosion on the Sphinx has caused some people to theorize it was built when the environment was more jungle-like.
Yes.
What did the Sphinx look like after its initial construction? And, what were the features of the face? And was it painted or decorated in any way?
It was painted and decorated, and it featured the idea of Anubis. You have still representations on your planet of many different depictions of Anubis reclining in a sense, like what you would consider a canine to be sitting on the floor, all four paws down, sitting on top of a box. The idea is that the structure was a large representation of Anubis. The representation of the chamber upon which Anubis sits are the underground chambers underneath the Sphinx.
And the resistance that at the university level of any kind of exploration of the Sphinx and the erosion and the things that indicate that it's older than they originally thought, is that correct, that it is much older than they thought?
Yes, it goes back to at least 10,500 BC, as you say, because the idea is that it was built around the same time as the Great Pyramid and certain other structures on your planet that acted for the purpose of preserving information that was destroyed in Atlantis.
Yes, which leads to this question. This person is saying that they love books and that things like species that go extinct here and libraries that have disappeared, and such as the Library of Alexandria, the Mayan libraries, all that have been destroyed. Have these been actually taken to other locations to preserve them? And if they hadn't been destroyed, what would our civilization be like now?
Some of the information, not all, has been preserved in other locations, some of which you have found and some of which you have yet to find. If the Library of Alexandria had not been destroyed, you would certainly consider Atlantis to be part of your history. That's one change that would have happened, because there was a lot of information about that culture preserved in the Library of Alexandria. Some of that information still exists in other places, some of which we have just mentioned in terms of chambers under the Sphinx. But the idea also would be that your technology would be somewhat different as well, and would be more based on the idea of vibrational resonance at this point, rather than the idea of the polluting technologies you have been using.
Are any of these libraries have material taken off planet in a sense by other ETs or anything like that to preserve them, or no?
Well, that was really not necessary because, as we have said, one of the great gifts humanity will be given when you start to really have open contact is that you will be presented with a device that will actually show you the full range of your history. So, through the observations that have happened from extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional sources, it wasn't really necessary to absolutely preserve the information that existed on your planet, although some of that was done, but not that much, because the extraterrestrials already had, through their observation of you for thousands of years, already recorded all of your history and didn't really need your version of it for the most part. Some of it was preserved for, shall we say, sentimental or nostalgic reasons, but that's not because the extraterrestrials needed to preserve it. They already had all that information recorded in their own devices. And again, that will be presented to you when open contact is fully established with your planet. You will be given back your full history.
And what can you tell us about the Egyptian goddess archetypes Bastet and Sekhmet? Do they have any ET connections? And what does it mean when they keep showing up symbolically in somebody's life over and over again?
Well, Bastet in particular has to do with connections to other dimensions and understanding of knowledge that is accessed through other dimensions, through the spirit realm, but connected to the idea of the animal known as the cat on your planet who can see interdimensionally. So when it keeps showing up synchronistically, it might be for that person a general indication, although some specifics will need to be understood about that particular person. But as a general indicator, might be an indication of the ability to go into the vibrational frequency that is similar to the idea of the animal, represented by the cat on your planet, that can see spirits, that can see and make connections and communicate with spirits in the spiritual realm, in the non-physical realm. Sekhmet, we will talk about at another time.
Okay. And this is a question, a yoga question. Raja Yoga meditation practices to realize oneness with God or union of individual soul with omnipresent spirit. I know you've described these all as permission slips, but it seems to be a very comprehensive system similar to the formula. So is yoga science essentially our birthright?
Well, all things in your reality are your birthright. But the idea of yoga stretches back many thousands upon thousands of years and actually did begin in Lemurian times, in Muin times. The idea, as we have said, is that yes, everything is a permission slip, but some of them are vibrationally connected to the larger portions of the archetypal representations in your collective consciousness, and thus will work for more people than other permission slips might, that might bring a more specific energy for smaller groups or individuals. So many different kinds of permission slips are connected more directly to the collective consciousness and thus can work for many people, whereas others might be more specifically tailored to smaller groups or individuals.
And could you explain what the Merkaba is and what levels of existence it's relevant to?
The Merkaba, in a sense, is an energetic representation vibrationally of the connection between physical and non-physical reality. In a sense, it's a geometrized, symbolic version of the transition between physical and non-physical reality, which many beings have described as the so-called tunnel of light.
Good day. This transmission is called the Archetypes of God. And what we mean by this is you have many names for the idea of what you call God. God, Goddess, Allah, Jehovah, Tetragrammaton, the light, the I am that I am, Wakantanka. It doesn't really matter what it is that you use as a name to identify the concept of all that is. But it is important to understand that all of these names represent different archetypal expressions, different angles and different perspectives of the same one thing, so that all of your apparently separate religions, no matter how they present themselves, no matter how many symbols they use to represent the idea of God or aspects of God, are all talking about the same thing, but from different points of view that serve the uniqueness of the culture in which they live. But the idea is to understand that it all comes from source, it all is within the light. And the light, source, all that is, expresses itself in all these ways in order for there to be sufficient symbols for all the different cultural experiences on your planet, all the different individual experiences even within a culture on your planet. As we have said, the misinterpretation of what you have called, in one particular Judeo-Christian culture, the Ten Commandments, are really the messages that were delivered in a very different way that have been misunderstood, misquoted, because of the level of understanding that existed in the culture at the time. And the so-called First Commandment, I am the Lord your God, thou shalt not have false gods before me, really was a mistranslation and a misunderstanding of the idea that really would be more accurately represented as, I am that I am, and all reflections are me, therefore none can be false before me, for I am all that is. So the idea is to understand that all that is presents itself in a variety of archetypal forms, the father energy, the mother energy, God, Goddess, all that is, as you sometimes say. And these serve various functions and translate into your reality as, shall we say, smaller representations of all that is that are specifically designed to deal with specific cultural differences, specific ideology differences, specific individual interpretations and differences. Fundamentally speaking, the archetypes are all that is way of making sure that no matter what angle you approach all that is from, you will have a symbol and a representation that can serve your unique perspective. They are all true parts of all that is, because there's nothing outside of all that is. Anything you can experience as an archetypal representation, or even when you assume it is the entire representation of all that is true and accurate, because all that is everything that can possibly be. There's no outside to it. There is nothing that is not it. So it doesn't really matter how you relate, what relationship you form with the idea of any presentation of all that is, any idea or formation of the idea of God, be it the old man with the long beard, be it the idea of the Virgin Mother, be it the idea of a rock or a mountain. It matters not to all that is, because all that is all those things, and more, beyond even your imagining. For all that is in its archetypal presentations also forms the symbols that are relatable to not only your particular human culture, but many cultures throughout the cosmos, throughout infinity. Anything and everything being a reflection of all that is, has its own way of understanding the presentation of archetypes from source, has its own representations that make sense to their cultures. So there are an infinite variety of presentations of all that is, but it is still the same one thing fundamentally. But as you expand your consciousness and start to realize that all of these are different faces of the same thing, as many people on your planet have expressed, the 9 billion names of God are still representative of the same one thing in the holographic, multidimensional presentation that it can use to present itself, then you start to allow those differences to sort of melt away, except for the parts you feel you need. and allow yourself to have a direct relationship, more directly, with Source, without necessarily needing it to be anything but the light. And in that light, you feel the vibration of the eternal existence that it is, the vibration you translate as the unconditional love of God. This is the vibrational frequency of existence itself. It is unconditionally supporting, unconditionally loving. And the idea is that there is no judgment in this. There is no expression of the negative in this. So even when individuals in different cultures might express or experience the idea of negative or demonic experiences, you have to understand this is still all part of God. Because there is the positive, there is the negative, and there is the neutral. These are the major archetypal energies, and they can be expressed in a variety of ways that can serve either positive or negative means. So allow yourselves to lessen the differences, in a sense, use them in whatever way serves you, use them in whatever way allows you to learn the lessons you need to learn, for the agreements that you chose to experience, the challenges that you created for yourself in this life to learn who you are and grow in various situations. Again, using the positive and negative mechanisms in a variety of ways. For ultimately, again, when you return to spirit, when you remember more of who you are, it will just be an experience. You will experience the archetypal expression of your life, which is another archetypal expression, because each and every one of you is unique, and you form your own archetypes for others to connect to draw upon, to download information from and experience from, the archetype that you are of all that is, because everyone is all that is, experiencing itself as all of the individualities that you believe yourself to be. So you are also an archetype of all that is, an archetype of God, experiencing itself in a unique way, knowing itself from a unique perspective. There will be more about this concept in a future transmission, in a way that you can more readily apply in your physical reality experience. But for now, just let it settle into you that every single thing you see, every single thing you experience, in a sense, is an archetypal presentation of all that is, the trees, the rocks, the streams, the animals, the sky, the moon, the stars, the earth itself, are all different variations and different expressions of all that is of source, of the light. And you, yourself, are also an archetype of God. We thank you for allowing us to share this concept with you this day of your time. And we ask now in return, how may we be of service to you? You may begin, if you wish, with your questions and dialogue.
Hey, Bashar. My name is Justin, and I'm up here in beautiful and rainy Salem, Oregon. It's just south of Portland. And my question is really about what you talk about in finding passion and pleasure all the time. In the middle of obviously the pandemic and building my business in the last few years, and really working hard to keep my family afloat during all of these uncertain times, I feel like a lot of my life has just become work. And even the things that I felt like I was once passionate about before, I don't feel as excited about them anymore. And so I'm having a hard time really latching onto the concept, because I feel like I'm in a weird kind of a void of a space. So any guidance that you can give on helping identify my passion and really really focusing on that would be just an amazing help. Thank you so much, Bashar, and hope you have a great day.
Well, as we say again, the idea of acting on your passion and recognizing it does not have to be an overarching project or a career. If you find that you have, or the feeling comes that you have lost your passion or lost your way, refocus simply by looking at everyday events. There are things in your life, simple things, everyday things, taking a walk, reading a book, speaking with your family, having simple, creative ways of exploring things together, that are representative of passion, as long as they contain more excitement than anything else, any other choice, then that's representative of your passion at the moment. Act on it first before any other choice. If it contains even just a little bit more attractiveness or excitement than any other choice on a simple everyday level, just act on it first, taking it as far as you can until you can take it no further. Then look for the next thing. Always make sure you're not the one dampening the excitement, but that it wanes naturally, which is the synchronistic indication that you need to look for the next thing that contains even just a little bit more attractiveness, curiosity, or excitement or passion than anything else, and act on that next. And again, it can be simple. You might just feel like, well, the most exciting thing I can do is eat a meal. The most exciting thing I can do is tell someone a story. The most exciting thing I can do is take a walk. Allow yourself to let go of the passion needing to represent itself in any particular grandiose form, and just allow yourself to act on the simple excitements that come with everyday things. That's how you begin, and then it will snowball. But again, you have to look for the times and places where you are willing to allow yourself to act on your excitements, to allow your excitement to prove to you over time that it can support you, instead of holding on to things you believe you need for support right now that aren't exciting to you. Again, as always, you don't need to let go of the things you believe you need to support you right now if they are not going to allow yourself to believe that your excitement can do the same thing. So don't let go of those things you're doing that are not exciting if you believe you need them for support. But over time, give your excitement a chance to prove to you it can also support you by taking whatever time you can take to act on them. And the easiest way to do that is by doing the simple things. And then let it build. Let it snowball into something bigger and bigger. And let synchronicity provide you with more time in an easy way before synchronicity responds to your wish for more time in a more challenging way. Because many people, let's say they're doing a job, for example, that they are not really excited about, and they keep wishing for more time to do what excites them, and suddenly find themselves getting fired. So the idea is, now they feel adrift. But the idea is they could have been practicing their excitement in the time they had, giving the excitement time to prove that it could support you so you can make an easier transition from what you don't prefer to what you do, rather than suddenly and abruptly finding yourself afloat, as you say, in the idea that you were holding on to something longer than you needed to, but still pushing for the idea of finding your passion. Well, something has to come to a head at some point, and if you refuse to allow for your excitement to prove it can support you over a longer period of time and an easier path for you, then you might come up against that moment where suddenly everything has to immediately change in order for you to finally get the point that you really need to start relying on your passion to replace the support that you were experiencing by doing something that isn't who you truly are.